tonight's speaker is Dr. Lye, who is a Lopan in the Drikung Kagyu Tibetan lineage of Buddhism, and yeah. So he's been to EBS many times over the past 10 years. We really appreciate his visits. And I think if there's anything, if you do want to stay for the weekend, there's still space if you want to do that. But otherwise, enjoy this evening. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, that fan in the back. It's not too late to move to the front. I did shower. And I don't bite, not anymore. Okay, let's see. Good.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, good. So good evening to all of you. Thank you for coming. Friday night is like a prime time, you know. Takes a little bit more effort to get out of the house, especially in this steamy, hot weather. So you should just declare success. Then I need to worry less about whether I deliver or not. The fact that you turned up, it's already success. So pat yourself and say, good job. For this weekend and for this evening, the title of the program is to safeguard the heart. So safeguarding the heart, protecting the heart. So this word, the heart, is used. You could say don't give too much. Don't think too much about what it means, what it doesn't mean. I think it's another way of saying how to protect yourself. But since you know the self definitions of self would kind of vary from person to person, and even within the person it varies, right? Where the contours, where the boundaries between self and not self can change. And so then the Buddha tended to use the word that actually a string of words, a grouping of words that can variously be translated as the heart, the mind, thoughts. It's good to note that he avoided using words that were certainly available to him, but words that he avoided using, which is words that we may translate as spirit, self with a capital S. And I would say that the main reason he avoided using those words is that it's a little too subtle or ephemeral, a little too abstract. So what he wanted to point to is something that you and I, without too much effort, can identify and say, that's what he's talking about when he's talking about how to protect that, how to protect yourself. So specifically, it has to do with how to protect your heart, how to safeguard your heart, how to safeguard the mind. Because as far as the Buddha is concerned, these two simple but potent words, happiness and suffering, independent of this mind, independent of this heart, they have no meaning. In other words, happiness and suffering takes place at the heart, in the mind. So heart mind, again, doesn't need to be so technical. For sure, after the historical Buddha, Buddhists spend a lot of time trying to use words to fine-tune what this heart mind and what it covers, what it doesn't cover. How is it similar to what other people are talking about? How is it dissimilar to what other people are talking about? And certainly there's been a lot of literature translations of primary texts into English and various modern languages, lots of books like that. But I would argue, I would say that if we just stay with what the Buddha was interested in his own time, it's actually something very simple. Nothing even that mystical about, and specifically he avoided what we may call mysticism. So maybe most of you are familiar, with the basic story of the Buddha, right? A young man, a privileged young man, which later traditions say was a prince, but closer to what he truly was, or what he was, was what we may call a very privileged young man. Because we also know now that he lived in a small kingdom in eastern India that didn't really have kings during his time. So he was not a prince as the mythology presents him, but he was privileged. And had a comfortable life. But at some point, we say at the age of 29, his questions about what does this all mean? And then, like many people with privileged backgrounds, at some point, you could say, in our day, we would say, middle class guilt, Got him to go to India. No, he was already in India, so he didn't go to India. But enough that he left his life of privilege looking for answers. And it said that in his looking for answers, he did go in the direction of what we would now recognize and call mysticism. And it said that through those approaches, he arrived at what these different teachers said was the height of spiritual attainment. So he experienced like very amazing and subtle and profound states of being, states of mind. In one case, it was described as there was a teacher that he followed that was able to lead his students to such a refined state of meditative focus that it was called the attainment of neither consciousness nor non-consciousness. So it's not like they were, striving to be comatose. It's something beyond that. You can't say that there's no consciousness, but you also cannot say that there's consciousness. So there were many who thought during his time that the solution to the existential problem is to achieve this very profound state of being where you can't say something is there, you can't say nothing is there. And it said that he was dissatisfied with that experience. Then he went to the next teacher. And this teacher says was able to lead his students into experiencing boundlessness. In fact, what we now may call no separation between self and other, like boundless consciousness. Like he became what we may call one with everything. But we are told that he was not satisfied with that. Yes, so those stories actually tell us that he didn't think, he was not convinced that the answer to our existential problems are these intense states of minds, states of being that is induced through this discipline or that discipline. There was also a belief during his time that perhaps the problem is this body, and that there was something that was beyond this body that was in one way or another trapped and limited by the body. And so then he also took the route of disciplines that basically try to, pull apart the body and its limitations, and that which is not body, and that can go beyond those limitations. So they said that at one point he was eating only 1 grain of rice per day, maybe exaggerated, maybe not, because to this day, there are people in India who still saw something like that as a worthwhile goal to pursue. And so what we are told is that he also went through these regimens of basically trying to transcend the body in its extreme ways. And he was able to do that, but he did not find a satisfactory solution to the problem that he felt, that he saw. So then he gave up on that as well. And it said that right when he was about to give up on the whole search, first he passed out, like he almost died because of, in this case, malnutrition. And he has already gone to the extremes of mysticism. Answer wasn't there. Then he tried, this mind over matter to its extreme, and he almost died. Luckily, it said that there was a woman who was preparing this basically rice pudding as Thanksgiving to spirits of the forest, because months before she had gone to a particular forest and made a prayer, a request to the forest spirits for her to give birth to a child. She and her husband has been trying and not succeeding. But then finally she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. And she thought it was the prayers answered. So she prepared this offering to give back as thanksgiving to these forest spirits. When she got there, she saw Siddhartha passed out, and then she fed the rice pudding to him. And it said that that saved him and he regained his health. But then he was still in, I guess you could say, a real crisis. Yeah, because everything known to him that could be an answer to the existential angst, the existential problem that he was trying to overcome, there was no answer. Then it says, suddenly he remembered an experience that he had when he was about 7, 8 years old. And what that experience was, when he was around the age of 7, 8, 9, somewhere thereabouts, during the annual harvesting festival, his father being king, or at least chieftain, right, was involved in the celebration, and it's a ritual, it's a celebration, is to till the land, to harvest. And I think it's not harvesting, it was a plowing day for a successful year of planting. And there were these festivities. And that he, in all the hustle and bustle and all the celebration, he kind of pulled himself away from the crowd and sat under a tree and just rested his mind and his body under a tree. And he remembered entering a state of mind and settling his body in a way that he had forgotten after that one experience at the age of 8 or 9. Then it said that now he decided, I need to go back to that experience. And then he let his body relax. It's just being refreshed by nourishing food. Then his mind settled. And then it said from that moment on, his mind began to go in a particular direction that before long, I think within a week, he could see and understand things clearer and clearer and clearer and clearer, until that fateful night, right before dawn, throughout that night, it said that 3 knowledges arose in his mind as clear as something that is placed on his palm. The first knowledge was, it said that he could see all his past lifetimes in all its details and clarity. Who he was in this lifetime, what he did, the results of those actions, how they played out, how they then provided the impetus of forming his next life. And from that next life, the choices he made, the skillful choices he made, the mistakes that he made, and how that again formed the circumstance of his next lifetime. And it says like billions and billions of lifetimes he could see in like one moment. The way some people talk about a deathbed, your whole life kind of flash in front of you in this one moment. It said that he saw all of that. And that was said to be the first knowledge. The second knowledge said that then not only was he able to see his own kind of personal, we call karmic history, he was able to see how karma was playing out all around him with all the beings that existed in that present time. How some beings were passing out of one existence and starting another existence, all the comings and the goings he could see. Then finally, the third knowledge was the knowledge that allowed him to destroy the very roots, the very causes of, now he understood, confused existence. He knew that there was something, there was like what I call the existential problem, the existential angst, but he until then he couldn't quite put a finger on what exactly is the problem. And I think we all have this feeling like something is just wrong, but what exactly is wrong, I can't tell you. And for him, it was strong enough for him to leave behind a life of privilege to get to the bottom of it. Then part of that third knowledge was understanding the problem is confused existence. And what's called samsara, which literally means the circle, the round. In this case, the round is not like a positive symbol. In other contexts, the circle is positive. In this context, the connotation is like a water wheel that, kind of gains its own momentum, and then it keeps rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and rolling and crushing everything on its way. He saw that that is what the problem is. Once he understood and saw clearly that that's what the problem is, he also saw how to undo this endless rolling. And what were the forces that was pushing this kind of existence? And how this kind of existence fed on itself and perpetuating itself and creating suffering for self and other as it rolled on. And once he understood that, that understanding cut once and for all the energy, the impetus for this continued existence, then everything was cut. It said that he kind of had this poetic moment when he says, "Oh, house builder, today I have seen you, and you are not building anymore. Your rafters are demolished. You are fired. Finish. I am done. No more building." That is when he said, "And today I am awake. I am the awakened one," which is what Buddha means. I'm the awakened one. So how do we safeguard, he says? How do we protect? And what are we protecting from? Is to protect from this sneaky architect, this sneaky engineer that is continuously building and building and building. And he says, I have seen you finally today. I know where all this comes from. Now I'm done with you. So when we talk about safeguarding, this is what we're talking about. So this is what we're talking about. Yes, as in, this is what the Buddha was talking about. Now let's talk about, why are you here? You think something is wrong? In this juncture in life in America, Are we kind of in the same wavelength? I don't want to presume, assume anything. And it's okay if we're not. But even if we're not, I think we all agree, like something is just not right. Maybe where we disagree is how to fix what's not right. Yeah. Luckily for me, I'm not talking about that. And I don't know how to fix that either. Yeah. But what I'm hoping to do is just to offer perhaps another problem for you to solve. Because part of Siddhartha solving the problem is actually, I would say most of the 6 years, it says, it took him 6 years. At least what we can see was those 6 years. Then later Buddhist tradition says, actually, no. It was lifetimes and lifetimes of working on it. And whether you accept that or not, that's entirely up to you. But 6 years is maybe long enough, right? That's like a master's degree. So 6 years, in those 6 years, I would say that most of the time it's not so much that he couldn't figure out the answer. Most of the 6 years was probably figuring out what exactly is the question. And I think sometimes we should ask, am I asking the right questions? Right? If you're not finding whatever answers you're looking for, it could be that that's not the real question that you're asking. And that's why wherever you look, like Siddhartha, he didn't find the answers until he exhausted his questions. And then he had a memory of this experience when he was 6, 7, or 8. And then he discovered the right question to ask. And once he was asking the right question, the answers came very quickly. And so why are we here? What are we hoping to protect ourselves from? I'm not even going to ask, what is self? We just lay aside that question. Now we start with, what are we trying to protect ourselves from? Okay, more neutral. That seems like a, leading, right, question. What would we like to be protected from? What would you like to be protected from? Enough to sacrifice one Friday.
A mindless divergence from attention.
Mindless diversions from
Attention,
So attention is preferable?
sure. I mean, it's not the main reason.
Oh,
Afflictive emotions would be the main,
oh yeah.
but
You drank the Kool-Aid. Good word. Afflictive emotions. Yes. So
yes, I feel like, attention's so vital,
right.
not just in terms of the.
So it's exhausting, right?
Right.
When we are being kind of yanked this way and that way. So it has been really exhausting. Even not having a Facebook account is exhausting these days, right? And it's exhausting because why? Why has it been exhausting? I mean, I'm not, even I allude to things that happen across the street, and other such places. But that's not really what I'm interested in. Yeah, but more like on an experience level, what is it that is exhausting us? So, these useless emotions, afflictive emotions, painful emotions, right? So what about emotions is exhausting? And why are they exhausting?
Grieving about the way things people are.
Grieving about loss, right? Loss of what we thought was there. Loss of what we remember having. That grieving is exhausting. And why? Why do we think is why do you think it's exhausting though?
Feeling helplessness and vast suffering and unfolding.
Yeah, feeling of helplessness. Is this helplessness about yourself or about others? Both. How would you assign percentages? Just curious, you know?
It fluctuates through the day.
It fluctuates. That's an honest answer. It fluctuates. But generally, what are the proportions?
Mainly worried about myself,
Oh,
honestly.
no, I don't think so. We don't have to be modest.
Be 70-30.
70-30. Which way now?
70 south, 30 other.
Really?
It fluctuates.
It fluctuates, yeah. What else would we like to be protected from? Anything else, or this covers it, or? I mean, right now, we want to be protected from the AC breaking down.
So much incoming. Incoming
Ah,
for me.
what's coming in?
Energy from elsewhere.
Fair to say, energy that you don't want, right?
Right.
Ah, okay, so things that we don't want keep turning up. Right, it's really inconvenient.
An aversion.
Yes, aversion towards that. Yeah, it's really inconvenient.
Fear what's not happening.
Yes, fear of what's gonna happen next. If this is what's happening, then that's what's gonna happen, and that's what's gonna happen, and then, right, the whole kind of scenario gets played out.
It's kind of a low key, kind of not really being in touch with what's going on. You know, it's like, maybe you could say.
And not liking that, you mean?
I don't feel like I'm really like being completely present, but that sounds even too, I don't know what, meditation like, it's just like, it's just a little out of touch. And while there's like glimmers of, you know, something's there, but it's just like, it's just not exactly getting it, you know? And so. it's
Not understanding what's going on?
Probably, I mean, that's just, you know, they. There's probably all kinds of facets of that, but it's just, their sense of, I do know the difference of like being present and really seeing things. The openness and spaciousness of stuff and presence. But most of the time I'm in a cloud or a scrim. And it's like catching up and it's like, and a blanket with all those things that people are talking about.
Because there are too many questions now?
It's more diffuse than that.
Oh,
To me, I mean,
Oh,
it's a
okay.
diffuse thing, this is just the underlying current of like. You know,
not knowing?
not being quite fully here. I don't know, I know it's vague, but that's my discontent. Got a lot of happiness and.
10 years ago was more here, let's say.
No, actually, I mean, just because of practice and, in all this, I feel like it's less that way,
Nah,
you know. But I think that
okay.
in the past I was different, you know. Anyway, it's all.
Oh, no, anyway, keep going.
No, it's gotten better, but it's through
Uh-huh.
practice.
Yes, yes,
Through practice.
right, so you
But
can,
and I'm able to kind of, you know, there's this underlying discontent kind of thing, and it's like, I've heard this story many times about Buddha, and it's like, I'm kind of hearing it kind of fresh, you know, like,
Mhm.
that's pretty good, but not quite there yet. And some kind of, but I happen to know that I've had experiences where like, yeah, more of that kind of thing, but it's so out of the blue, nothing I can control,
Mhm, mhm.
you know, can't force it. And so forth, so there's a kind of, and you get pummeled and pushed around by events and by,
Right,
you know, and there's no equanimity in a way of, dealing with the tumult and the boredom or the stress, or the illness or.
yes, yes, yes.
How about some groundedness? How about some settledness? It sounds like I'm miserable, but it's just like an undercurrent.
Yeah.
Talk to you tomorrow about it.
I think objectively, maybe it's fair to say the whole world is triggered. Yeah, I think I can agree. I don't have I won't object to if someone said, you know, I think the whole world is triggered right now. Yeah. I think we can say that. Yeah. So that's certainly valid. Yeah. We don't need to argue too much about that. The whole world is triggered. But I think it's also helpful to know that there are degrees of being triggered. And some people are actually less triggered. And I'm not even talking about the people who think great things are happening. I'm not even talking about them. I'm talking about there are communities within our community who have always understood this particular reality. I know it's hard to wrap our heads around this, but there are parts of our community who has never had the privilege to think that everything is just fine. Their whole lives. This is not a big surprise to them. They are just saying to us, oh, now you think there's a problem, huh? And I'm not saying this to make light of what is going on, but just to say so much of it also depends on where we are standing. Yeah. So it's an ugly truth that we didn't have to see, but it doesn't mean that there weren't enough people who saw that all along. And in some ways, I think they are less triggered. You know, they're less triggered. They're like, yeah, okay. Now, now you guys are seeing what, you know, for generations we have seen. And to point that out is again not to say, oh, okay, now everything is fine, you know, but I think it gives some perspective. Because the thing about confusion is that confusion begins and ends and takes place individually. So there's a Buddhist saying, everyone has their own particular samsara. Isn't that word, confused existence? So everyone's samsara is different. But all the Buddhists, the awakened ones, they are awakened in the same way. I think Tolstoy has something like the equivalent of.
Anna Karenina.
Yeah, like happy families are all happy in the same ways, and unhappy families are unhappy in their all particular ways, So in a state of confusion, we don't necessarily share the same, set of confusion. But they can all be freed in the same way. So we can be protected in that sense in the same way. And part of being protected is to see clearly what exactly are the mechanics of suffering. How does it come about? How does it play out? And so part of what the Buddha was, or a big chunk of what the Buddha was interested in, is to help us see the cause and effect of suffering. And so that begins and takes place and ends with the heart, the mind. So I said to some people that, like some of my students, I said, if you are frustrated that your practice doesn't seem to be helping, and not only not helping you, you are starting to feel, is it helping other people? Especially a certain variant of the Buddhist teachings emphasize a lot about how you do all your practices for the benefit of others. I said that conceptually, in order to really understand what they mean by, do all your practices for the sake of helping others. I said, you cannot, not cannot, but if you were to try to do that based on a Christian understanding of helping others, then it will not achieve those goals. I'm not highlighting or targeting Christianity. I'm nothing against it. I'm just saying our kind of default background. And you don't even need to be actively Christian or to have come from that background. It's just the air that you breathe, It's Christian, Judeo-Christian, Abrahamic, whatever you want to call it. In those traditions, what's external is very important. The whole concept of God in due time, even though mysteriously we don't know why for a long time, the world is not a just place. But the promise is that a day will arrive when the world is just and it's loving. The two qualities of God. It's just and it's loving. That one day will come. And outside, not just inside, outside, right? There is justice and there is love in concrete external reality. And if we try to achieve that using Buddhist methods, it won't deliver so well. I'm not saying that Buddhists are not concerned about what's outside. All I'm saying is a degree of emphasis. The Buddhist project, so to say, is way more about what is it that you're experiencing in your heart, in your mind. And I'm not even saying that therefore that is a superior. Because I grew up in Asia. I've seen how cultural Buddhism may have contributed to injustice in society, in social structure. I'm not saying the Buddha intended it, human beings being human beings. Yeah, so I'm not like, I would like to think I don't have, such fantasies, oh, if only everyone becoming Buddhist, then everything would just be great, So there are some consequences to focusing so much on the inside. But here's the thing, and that's why I like teaching in the environment that I am in. I chose to be in the West, so to say. Proudly, I chose to be here. Not like you who didn't have a choice, you were born here. I chose to be here. Yeah. And I chose to do what I'm doing here. Why? Because you are already very schooled and very much sold on how there should be justice in the world. There should be love in the world. So I don't need to teach you that. I don't have much. I don't pretend to know much to teach you how to do that. But what I think I can do is to give some balance to this picture and to persuade you to consider more seriously in order for that goal to happen in the world. You have to work on things that are inside. And that's the strength of the Buddha's teachings. And that's the strength of the Buddha's teachings. I don't happen to be one of those Buddhist teachers who think Buddhism has the answer to all of the world's problems. I don't think so. But here, especially now, where so much of the outside seems to be slipping away. But the Buddha will say, the control that you thought you had, or the structure that you thought was there, maybe wasn't really there in the first place. It's just that it's now unmasked and much more raw, so that you can't pretend that that's not the case. And this is not a statement about how negative and depraved we are. It's just the way things are. And I know that phrase can be really annoying if you're committed to changing the world, to hear that's just how things are. But because I know you won't be sold on that, I don't need to convince you more of that. So I see my job, if I have a job, is to try to convince you while you're trying to achieve justice and love in the world. You need to fix certain basic things that is inside. How to skillfully take care of yourself. Skillfully taking care of yourself is a necessary starting point for being able to skillfully take care of others. And so safeguarding the heart in this context is not just about yourself. It is about, so when we put these two together, the Western emphasis on, God intended this world to be a just and loving place. So that's the external. I have no fights with that. I can live with that. Now, if that's the case, then God will do what God does, but then you have to do what you have to do. And whatever God is, right? Nature, evolution, you substitute whatever word you want with, what's going on the outer level. But on the inner level, the Buddha says, we have these poisons, these mental defilements, these afflictive emotions. And they come up because we have forgotten who we are. We have become disconnected from our nature. So in some of these teachings, very interestingly, it says, when you begin to recognize suffering as suffering, and that's an interesting expression. When you begin to recognize suffering as suffering, that is the turning point. So what does that mean? That means we have this problem of not recognizing suffering as suffering. So perhaps Inauguration Day this year is actually a turning point to begin to see suffering as suffering. I'm not saying there's some big plan out there. I have some Buddhist friends who believe that. They think that, our current president is part of this big plan to finally bring justice into the world. I mean, bless their hearts, as we would say. I'm not even talking about that level of I'm just again suggesting we can either look at a situation and then, it's half empty, half full. And actually in the end, it doesn't matter whether you think it's half empty or half full. It's what happens after you believe it's half empty or half full. What happens after that? If what happens after that is, oh, it's half empty, there's nothing I can do. Bad answer. If it is, oh, it's half full, therefore there's nothing for me to do. Bad answer. So that next step has to be, you can choose to believe it's half empty. You can choose to believe it's half full. Whatever you choose to believe, the next step of, and therefore, I'm going to do something about it. That was what was more important to the Buddha. Not to be stuck in suffering and not recognize that it's suffering. But to whatever you want to believe, to stir yourself up to say, that is suffering, and I don't like it. In fact, he says, when you recognize suffering as suffering, nobody needs to tell you not to like it. It sounds like, you're just playing with words, but that's so much of our reality. Because once you see suffering as suffering, nobody would hold on to it. It's just we're not sold. We're not convinced that it's suffering. We're not convinced it's a burning hot coal. And you're holding on to it. You're like, it's burning, it's burning. Why is it burning? Look, you don't need to know why it's burning, you just need to know how to let go. Yeah, so in that way, the Buddha also wasn't interested in philosophical speculation about. And so famously, there's a story told, so in his time, and not so different from our days, I would say, there were a lot of seekers. And there's a lot of intellectual, philosophical, spiritual speculations. And so people were asking big questions. So one of these seekers, one of these ascetics came to the Buddha, and it was very fashionable he lived in the intellectually, spiritually vibrant times, like the 60s here. People were searching, people were experimenting and all sorts of things. So one of these guys came to him and said, so, people say that you say you are enlightened, huh? And the Buddha says, yes, I am enlightened. It's like, okay. And of course, this person is like, oh, so enlightenment means dot, 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 right? So I say, okay, I have a number of questions I would like answers for. Buddha says, okay, go ahead. And he says, so, is the world eternal or not? And the Buddha did not answer. So the guy said, okay, let me ask another set of questions. Did this world start at some point or not? Will this world end or not? Where did this world come from? Seemingly legitimate questions for people who'd like to think deep thoughts. And surely an awakened being, a Buddha, would have answers to these questions. The Buddha did not answer. And so this person, apparently he raised 10 questions. And Buddha said, let me ask you one question. Suppose somebody was shot by a poison arrow. And when his family found him and called the physician, and the physician was going to remove the arrow, this person goes, wait. Who shot me? So they went and, found out, and they're like, okay, we need to get this poison out of you. Yes, but hold on. Why did he shoot me? What was this wood made of? What was the feather that was used for the arrow? And so the Buddha basically said, what do you think? Is that wise or not? I said, oh no, that's foolish. The Buddha says, likewise. Because he said, those are deep thoughts, great questions, but what has that got to do with your suffering? I mean, again, you might think, well, it's legitimate because there are, right, spiritual traditions, philosophical traditions, political ideologies that think that the answer comes from asking these questions. Big questions. The Buddha says, this is all speculation. And even if I gave you an answer, right? It's just an answer that would satisfy your particular intellectual makeup. But is that going to solve the problem of the poison? No. Instead, what are the poisons? What is the antidote to those poisons? So then he says, it's all those things that disturb your heart. And why does it disturb your heart? Why do these things disturb our hearts? Anger, jealousy, all the fun stuff, Why do they exhaust us? Why do they make us feel, why?
We want to be at ease.
You want to be at ease. And why are they causing you not to be at ease?
Because the way we experience them is different than the way that we want them to be.
Right, and how are we experiencing them?
But then figure it out. A blind person can't have the same experience, visual.
Right, but what is it that afflicts you about these afflicted emotions, these mental defilements? Why are they inconvenient? Hmm?
Lack of control.
Lack of control, and why does that make us uncomfortable?
We like to think that we're autonomous,
Okay,
but we're.
so lack of control unnerves us, right? Why?
Want to be safe.
And lack of safety unnerves us. Why? Because it's not our nature. It's not natural to us. So here is proof. Good news. Here is proof that we're innately good. Goodness is innate. It's not a philosophical statement. It's an observable fact. Goodness is innate to us. And goodness, I'm not just talking about moral goodness. Of course, it has implications there. But goodness, like, I'm relaxed, right? How do we know it's good? Well, check with your muscles. They don't lie. Check with your breathing. They don't lie. Those are innate. You know, those qualities are innate. So it's the opposite of original sin. What we call basic goodness. So first we need to develop, I think, trust and confidence in this basic goodness. First, yourself. This basic goodness. Not as a article of faith, but as a way of getting in touch with some basic good that you can always have no matter what's going on all around you. Yeah. If nothing else, like I say, treat it as a strategy. I don't need you to believe in it as an article of faith, but test it out to see how it changes your experience, your quality of life. If you begin to place some trust in this thing called basic goodness. Because what basic goodness means, it's not saying because of basic goodness, you have to be perfect now. You have to love perfectly. You have to be generous perfectly. You have to live up to some saintly halo conferring level. That's not the meaning of basic goodness. The meaning of basic goodness is if we just pay attention, there is sufficient ease, joy, and safety to be found right in the midst of this chaos, right in the midst of all this unnerving things happening, without needing to deny or to whitewash or to pinkwash what's going on, without needing to believe that he is somehow part of this plan to save the world and to be rid of the pedophiles and whatever else that's happening. You don't need to go for any of those things. You don't need to hope that maybe next year things would change. Maybe things will change next year, right? As a matter of fact, election cycles, right? But there's something more basic that is available now. Not for narcissistic reasons, but for survival reasons. not to go crazy between now and next year. That you can tap into something that is more basically there. I'm not suggesting that you become the proverbial ostrich, right? There's this legend about how dumb ostrich. Have you heard of that? No? I don't think it's true, but anyway, it's kind of fun. Supposedly, when an ostrich is being hunted, after running and running and running and running, when it like feels like it cannot run anymore, it would stick its head into the sand. And since it can't see its enemy anymore, it thinks that it's safe. Supposedly, I don't think that dumb, but who knows? Maybe AI, ChatGPT can answer that question easily. So I'm not suggesting, that we take like Buddhist practice or spiritual practice as an escape. But what I am saying is we need to maintain perspective. Worse things have happened in the world. Way better things have also happened in the world. Every generation thinks that it's the most. There's no generation that goes, it's a so-so generation. Because we are on some level all egotistical. This is the time. Yes. Around 33 BC, some people thought, this is the time. Now, 2,000 years later, they are still reading the signs for the times. And not to make fun of that because we are in this culture, so we make fun of that. If we were in a different culture, there's a whole different set of stories and expectations and urgency that everybody is feeling. Again, I'm not saying any of this to make light of what is going on. I can tell you objectively, yeah, I'm in the most vulnerable position in this whole room. So I'm quite alert to what's going on. I've avoided leaving the country because each time I come in, it unnerves me. So I get it. But nonetheless, is it half full? Is it half empty? Actually, it doesn't matter. What you do next when you come to one or the other conclusion matters. And what we do next can start by learning how to find that basic goodness in the midst of the madness. We have all heard these teachings. No mud, no lotus. Okay, you have that poster hanging on your wall. Now, do something about that. Yeah, it's not just something nice when you are at a spa retreat to hear that, oh, no mud, no lotus. Now is the time to actually embody no mud, no lotus. Now is the time. Not so that you can become some spiritual hero, but just to keep your wits together. So don't let the noise distract us from some more basic truths about. And those communities that I've talked about that are not so surprised, by all that is going on, they have figured out some of this basic goodness. And that's why they are resilient. That's why they have not fallen apart more than we would have fallen apart. In some ways, as Buddhist teachings say, many of us have been living in the God realm. One of the faults of the God realm is, they say, pride. Not necessarily, the kind of obnoxious pride, but it's a sophisticated pride. It's a pride that comes across as, what's your problem? Everything's good. Everything's fine. And it says that in the God realm, those gods live like that for a long, long time. Until towards the end, it says that the flower garlands that they wear start to wither. And then a certain stench begins to be felt, and all the other gods begin to not invite them. You don't get party invitations anymore. You just find out like, wait, where were you guys last night? Oh, wait, no, we were all at home. So that's the classic description of the God realms. Like at the end, what happens to them? And then they say in the God realm, so you start to notice a particular god's like garlands are starting to fade. And then you're like, yeah, there's some funny smells. Oh, it's coming from him. Let's not invite him to things. Then after a while, they say, people will go, oh, have you seen so and so? No. Yeah. Huh. And then they move on. And that person has passed. We have been stuck in the God room. It's the time of waking up. It's the first step to Buddhahood. Something is just not quite right. What is not right? Ask that question differently. And then maybe you'll find answers. Don't take the questions as it is prepackaged. Investigate the questions we're asking. And then, like Siddhartha, we may find answers. So, your questions now. Yes.
Could you say more about recognizing suffering?
Yeah. Right. Sure. Recognizing suffering and suffering. So, one formulation of what suffering is, it's an American Buddhist teacher, senior teacher, now maybe in his 80s, close to 90s. Some of you may be familiar with his work, Shinzen Young. He formulated this kind of one way of looking at what suffering is. He says, pain, whatever pain, physical, mental, emotional, pain multiplied by resistance equals suffering. So this way of looking at what suffering is, I mean, it's not exactly in the Buddhist text, but it's helpful, right? Because after all, we're using English words. Yeah, the Buddha's word for suffering is dukkha. Dukkha, in a way, has its own kind of semantic field that it doesn't completely match suffering. Yeah. So Shinzen Young's formulation, I think, helps us to understand a little bit what we're talking about in terms of recognizing suffering as suffering. So he says, suffering is not pain. Pain is part of being human. The body is kind of the way it is. So that pain it's a way for the body to tell the mind, hey, pay attention, something is off here. In fact, there are disorders, nerve disorders where people don't feel pain, right? So then they could be like barbecuing their hands while cooking dinner and not know, and then it's too late, you know? I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it's not. I mean, there are people with that condition, right? So pain it's part of being human. And in that sense, it includes emotional pain, pain of loss. That is part of being human. We are not saying you need to deny that and you need to become superhuman / inhuman. Fine line, right? Superman and inhuman. We don't need to do that. But we need to pay attention to resistance, resentment, resistance, inability to accept. That turns it into suffering. Good news, resistance, you can work at it to reduce it to 0. Now, how many of us can get to 0? Maybe very few, but it's still good news. You can work on it so that it gets to 0. Bad news, pain is non-negotiable as part of being human, you know? Then again, is it half empty? Is it half full? It's fine, whatever you decide, but whatever you decide, make the decision that will motivate you to not just sit around and mope around and say, I don't have a choice. Make the decision that helps you say, I do have a choice, and I will choose. And so a lot of times we don't recognize suffering as suffering, in part because I think as a way to cope, right? So it starts off, I think, at least evolutionary, in an evolution context. It starts off as a way to kind of make it possible to suffer. So you mask it so that it becomes bearable from an evolutionary point of view. So we become more resilient. Yes, for sure. But in some ways, the Buddha is teaching us to break through that evolutionary habit. I know it sounds kind of radical, but I think that was what the Buddha was trying to do, in a way. It's saying, although it has helped us to cope, but it's keeping us confused about how this cycle of suffering gets perpetuated. The first step to breaking it is to unmask that and to see suffering as suffering. And to, in fact, see suffering as optional. There's a book called Suffering is Optional. Who wrote that? Anyway. No, I don't think he wrote that. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like what you're saying is that suffering is what you do to yourself. Pain happens,
Pain happens.
and then
Suffering
make
is
it
what
suffering
we
because you- right.
pick up. You know, so in that way, it's optional. You can put it down, suffering. Pain is just the way, you know, the body is constituted. It's the way that emotional pain that turns up, you know. But we don't need to suffer.
Well, and I can recognize it in my friends,
Uh-huh.
when they're doing. things,
Oh, yeah, oh,
right?
why are you, right?
Oh, she doesn't have to do that, but she's doing that, but it's really hard to see.
To see it in ourselves, yeah. Because we constantly distract. So that's why I see his picture here. This elderly monk, black and white in the back, Ajahn Chah. He said, we come to Buddhist practice because we fear suffering. And he says, that's good. And that's a good motivation to come to Buddhist practice. So he said, we come to Buddhist practice because we fear suffering. And then he said, but we're not going to solve this problem if we continue to fear suffering. So he said, then at a certain point, when you have some degree of experience in Buddhist practice, then you need to learn not to fear suffering. He says, you need to know how to carry suffering around and pay attention to it and watch it and feel its weight and feel its weight and feel its weight until you fully experience the weight of suffering. Then he says, nobody needs to teach you to put it down. And once you put it down, you will know how light it can be not to carry it around. And he says, rinse and repeat, keep doing that until it becomes second nature. That each time you see suffering, you don't go, ooh. And put it in your backpack, which is what we do. Ooh, look, it's sparkly. Put it in the backpack, right? And then we forget. But the weight is bearing down. But we forget that we collected those rocks. And then we say, oh, I just need to train to be stronger. That's when we don't recognize suffering as suffering. So pay attention skillfully. So yes, first, it's good to have a healthy fear of suffering. But once you have gained some, you could say, spiritual strength, then your relationship with suffering needs to change. Then suffering becomes a teacher. It teaches us how light it can be when we know how to let go. Questions? I'm looking for something. Yes.
I did have one question, going back to the glass half full, glass half empty.
Yes.
Deciding that there's a choice, and it's because I do love to suffer.
Welcome to the club.
I think sometimes I am at the point where I realize there's a choice, but.
So,
Oh, no.
my phone.
Oh.
Yeah. Sorry.
Realizing there's a part of a choice, and sometimes I get into that cycle where I say that, like, oh, what choice should I make?
Yes.
What's the next step? You can kind of sitting in that. Do you have any comments on that?
So here you're talking more about not metaphorical choice as in, but like choices, right? Like, do I do this? Do I do this? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, or sometimes it's where should I direct my attention or energy? Or
Yes.
something along that line.
Yeah. So now wanting to end suffering is a new source of suffering.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Yes. So what to do? So from one side, that's the privilege of being young. So enjoy it while you have it. Then maybe there's less suffering. that you have choices, you know? You say, what should I choose? Maybe this, maybe that, maybe this, maybe that, right? I know when you need to make a choice, it's really annoying. Yeah. But you can start by first recognizing, well, actually, it's a privilege. I have choices. Maybe this, maybe this, maybe this, maybe this. I don't know. Okay. Then from there, just choose something and see what happens. The privilege of being young. You can make stupid mistakes. Why not? Make enough of them, you have a better sense of choices. If you are the praying type, whoever you pray to, pray that none of these choices you have to make is going to be no turning around. It could work. I have no idea, you know, like praying to someone or something. Lots of people do it. But first, I think is don't add another. So I guess my point, joking aside, recognize that we then very quickly put another layer of burden on what's already a burden, having to choose among four things. It's like, and I know this well, now it's less of a problem, but there was a point in my younger life where not being able to go to sleep is what's making it not being able to go to sleep. Like being concerned that I can't go to sleep is what's feeding the not going to sleep, you know. But I'm getting pretty good at that. Like, you know, like really making a resolve, like, okay, so what? Can't sleep. That's not the end of the, you know. And my dad, like all his life, have problems with sleeping. And then, you know, years after his retirement, he's stressing over not being able to sleep. And I said, and what are you going to do when you wake up? Nothing. So what's the problem, you know? After a certain point, then I think he got it. He was like, okay, well, can't sleep, you know. I mean, it's just one example, I think. So here, in the fancier Buddhist teachings that I hope to cover this weekend, we also train in, you know, like all this is just talk, of course, you know, but there are trainings involved. So that's where I think the advantage of the Buddha's teachings is like there's theory and then there's path. So there's a Buddhist teacher I met years ago. There's a Buddhist teacher that I met years ago, and he talked about how he went from being a Baptist minister to being a Buddhist Dharma teacher. And he still considers himself to have this dual identity. And so what he said was, he said, when someone asked him, like, you know, why did you turn to Buddhism? You know, he said, for Christian reasons. Yeah, it was a good answer. And we're like, wait, what? And I said, because he said, I you know, became a serious Christian because I was really sold on the idea of the greatest commandment. Love God with your heart and soul and love your neighbor as yourself. And he said that was why he, very young, committed to being Christian, Baptist, then became a Baptist preacher. But he said somewhere along the way, he realized that although this was the greatest of commandments, he could not find resources in the Christianity that was available to him of how to do that, how to train himself so that he could do that. And he found it in Thich Nhat Hanh's particular way of presenting the teachings. So then he started to practice with Thich Nhat Hanh and joined that community, and he remains a teacher there in that lineage. So part of the training, yeah, is the training in what we call in the illusory nature of experiences. So some Buddhists would emphasize how this is how things are. In fact, things are illusory. But I take some, I take a different kind of approach to this. I say, you don't need to make that into some kind of religious dogma. In fact, don't do that. But consider how the techniques, the methods related to this idea, this concept, that experiences are dreamlike, movie-like, magic-like, and the ways of training your mind, training your heart to relate to experiences in that way, how that can give rise to a better state of being. And that should be sufficient. Yeah, so what you're hearing tonight, it's just talk. I get that, but there's a way to turn this talk into something that you experience, and then from experience gain conviction. And that's what we mean by faith, is gaining conviction and then standing firm with these convictions so that when you most need it, this conviction can do something that is positive for you, for your life, and for those around you. I asked for my phone because I was going to share something that I shared. May be useful. It's getting to 9 o'clock. With some pains, it is enough to let them be and pass in due time, rather than to try to make sense of them. So when the Buddha talks about, understanding suffering, understanding suffering as pain, as painful, he's not talking about like figuring out the ins and the outs of your particular suffering and the particular stories behind that. That has a place, that has a role, I think. And I for one would say to my students, please don't substitute Buddhist practice for good therapy. Because your particular context and therefore your particular social, emotional makeup certain problems that arise needs to be understood in terms of good therapy. Do that work. And then there's Buddhist practice. And these two may meet somewhere and overall put you in a better place. But to mistake Buddhism as therapy is also to deprive the power that Buddhist practice can have in ways that therapy cannot. But in this case, with some pains, it's enough to let them be and pass in due time, rather than to try to make sense of them. Just know them as pain, know them as suffering, and then put them down. Let them go. Now, if you cannot let them go, that's where effective therapy may help, but the goal is still to let them go. With some losses, it is enough to cherish their memories rather than long after their shadows. With some people, it is enough to just see them clearly and rather useless to try to level with them. With some situations, it's enough to just recognize them for what they are and quite pointless to try to get to their bottom. Inwardly, in your own world, be firm and resolute. Outwardly, in others' world, move through like wind and water. In the external world, learn how to move through like wind and water. Wind and water has a way of finding its way. Just keep flowing, keep blowing, you know. But inwardly, develop this firmness and resoluteness so that you don't get shaken so easily. And in some ways, you know, I think this is the gist of how we safeguard the heart. We have to develop some kind of firmness inside. But it's to be balanced with and not being rigid. Not to burden others with our hopes and fears. It's quite natural that our hopes and fears bleed out to, you know, people around us. But be aware of that. And don't put that burden on others. Then people enjoy having you around a lot more. And when people enjoy having you around a lot more, you enjoy being you a lot more. I don't know if EBS advertised this with the money back, in case you need to.
It was free.
Oh, okay. Sorry. For those of you coming tomorrow, I will reintroduce a set of guided meditation based on the first 4 steps of a 16-step approach to mindfulness of breath. And these first 4 steps is aimed at changing our attitude in some ways, like our basic approach and attitude to the mind-body connection, and recognizing the importance of settling the body and putting the body in a good place, in a happy place, in a natural way, using breath to calm the body. And that when the body is at ease in this skillful way, because there's also unskillful ways that we do to make the body happy. And those methods always leaves you with a big hangover of one sort or another. But the Buddha prescribed a very natural, effective way of working with breath. It's not instantaneous, so you know, it takes time. Yeah, but to know how to more easily put the body at ease is a very powerful kind of vessel to allow the mind to be at ease. So, so part of tomorrow and day after, what we'll do is to refamiliarize. So I've taught this before, I think here, is to refamiliarize this as one of these important tools, which contributes to the ability to recognize this basic goodness that I was talking about. Not as an abstract, but the good that is available now in the midst of so many things, and not feeling that they are in the right place. So to be able to reach that, to be nourished by that, is, I think, a powerful tool to have. Then other than that is, again, to in between, to I have some excerpts from Buddhist texts, that we will chew through and chew and chew and chew. The Dalai Lama says that in Tibetan they have a saying, when a teacher teaches a text, when the meaning is clear, then it should be savored and enjoyed, like an old man, toothless, is eating a piece of very tasty food. Then he would chew and chew and chew and savor. And then he says, then when this same person, gets a piece that is really hard and tough, he says, then just swallow and move on. Actually, this is many years ago in Miami. His Holiness was giving a public teaching, many-day public teaching. It's a very difficult text. And there was one part where he basically just read the text and then he didn't comment on anything. And so everyone could kind of feel, like, wait, what does that mean? Hoping that he would explain, and then he tells this, he says, he realized, like everyone is like, wait, what? You don't have an explanation for this? And basically he said, yeah, I have no idea what it's saying. He said, so let's just move on. Yes.
Can you say more about this basic goodness and because to me, I hear about this basic goodness and I'm with you as far as terms of it feeling natural and the body feeling relaxed.
Yes.
Sort of spontaneous joy, but is that can it become an obstruction if I'm clinging to wanting this basic goodness and then
Yeah, of course.
right. And
Don't.
create unease
Don't.
for
That's all. Simple. Don't.
myself.
It's not that complicated. Just don't. It's like, oh, would I cling to Buddhahood? You could, but don't. There's no fancier answer to that, Just good. You understand that, we could make it into a false idol. Don't. Okay. In the actual experience, there's a lot more turns and corners, and that comes from experience of all the ways to avoid wanting it to be this way or that. And so that's why even like with something like basic goodness, we say even that experience is ephemeral, illusory. So why the training in the illusory nature of all experiences? So then Buddhist philosophers get into these debates because they have to defend this position against Hindu criticism. And so tons of paper, have been used to go back and forth, But there's no end to words. If you directly experience it, we say, those who eat, hot peppers know how hot it is. Everybody else is just writing books about hot peppers. Yes.
Just as much as that you say that we don't know suffering until we know suffering, that we are suffering.
Mhm.
It's also that we don't know basic goodness,
Yes,
even though we know what basic goodness is.
yes.
When it happens.
Right.
And we don't even recognize
Yeah.
it.
So we have to
It can be
pay
happening all the time.
skillful attention.
So it's not just an event
No. It's ongoing.
on,
So our nature is like that. And when we have found a way to kind of check in with it, then the more we check in with it, the more we have conviction that this is possible. So the difference between believing in it and therefore just superficially meeting a facsimile of it and really experiencing it. In the first case, so these are some of the pages. In the first case, it becomes an object. Then when it's an object, then grasping can occur when it's a conceptual object. But when it's experienced directly in its pure form, there's no basis, it says. Yeah, so it's an article of faith, I know. But they do distinguish the two. They say that when it's a concept, then it becomes an object of intellectual experience. Then it's not it. It's a facsimile. It's a photocopy of the real thing. But when it's the real thing, its very nature is such that you can't grasp onto it. And so you won't run into that problems of wanting to fixate on it. And then if you find that you're fixating on it, then oh, it's the knockoff. Yeah, it's a knockoff, Yeah.
That's it's like to coin a term that Mick,
Uh-huh.
I heard first from Mick, said it's easy to over explain,
Mhm.
right? And so it's like, I think the more words you put on it, the further you get
Yeah.
from the actual direct, authentic experience.
Yes.
Capital love, oh, it's between two people. Oh, okay, well, now you've got context. It's like you're getting further from what it actually
Yes. Yeah. The Tao Te Ching says, those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know.
What is that?
Those who know do not speak, those who speak do not know. Then the Confucians, right, the alternative philosophical tradition in China, the competing tradition, turn this around and say, therefore, Confucius did not talk about the Tao because he knew it. Whereas you have a whole book talking about what the Tao is. Touche. Yes.
So if we have faith in this goodness in our heart,
Uh-huh.
it's actually there, it's not something.
Yes.
Would that be considered happiness? Would that be considered?
I don't know.
Well, it seems like it.
I
would
don't know
be
what
because
you
have
would
faith.
consider.
I would think it would be because you.
Good,
Feel goodness there. and
yeah,
You don't feel the. This.
yes. Yes, yes, no,
Stops it up.
of course, you know, the party line is yes. Yeah, but you go meet it and then you tell me. If you have complaints. I'll send it to the boss. But yes, yeah, they say, yes, that's, or at least that's where it begins. And then you have to, in one of the expressions, they say, you know, so stages of training, right? Where it is not abiding yet, make it abide. When it has abided, make it steady. When it has steadied, make it grow. So there are actually stages of training this. Meaning you're not sure yet about this basic goodness. In fact, at first it sounds like a concept. Because sometimes it's used that way, certainly. Like this is basic goodness, this is a Buddha nature. What I'm talking about is, I would say even less of that, more directly. There is good to be found in any moment. So it's not your basic goodness. There is basic goodness. There is that which is natural and normal right before, in the midst of all the wrongs that are going on, without needing to pretend things are not right. Yeah, but in the midst of all of that, there is basic goodness to be found. Not yours, not mine, not anyone's. It's just there. Right? So where it has not abided, where it has not stayed, you need to let it abide. Where it has abided, you need to stabilize it, steady it, make it, you know, steady. And then when it's steadied, you can let its implications, that's what it means by let it grow higher and higher. Let that implication begin to bleed into all areas of your life.
We're not talking about an intellectual, but we're
Yeah.
talking about a feeling or whatever you want to call it.
Yes. So there are these stages of growing. And through any method, any of these true and tested methods, whether it's vipassana, whether it's deity yoga, mudra, blah, 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 you know, these are all just methods. Thank you.
Yeah. Have a couple of announcements.
Yeah, sure.
We leave, first of all, if you're coming tomorrow, the doors will open at 8:30 and, we also have, tonight is free, was free, you can make donations. If you put a donation out by the front door, that one is for EBS plus him, plus Dr. Lye. But there's also a basket here, if you wanna make it, offer a gift just to him, because you appreciate his teachings. And so there's a basket there for that purpose, right here by the pillar. We're going to reconfigure the room for meditation. So you could help us by any chair that folds. We wanna fold them and put them behind that screen over there. In that area Nick is pointing to. If they don't fold, we just put them in the back of the room. And tomorrow, some people are gonna sit on the floor and some people will sit on a chair. If you're coming back tomorrow, when you get here, just make yourself a spot. Okay, that's comfortable to you, the cushions, the chairs you want. Set yourself up, okay? We don't know what you want, so we're just gonna leave it open to you, okay? I think that's it, donations, room configuration, opening at 8:30. We will have snacks, but bring lunch. And thank you very much, Dr. Lye, and thank you for coming. Yeah.
Good night.
You can help do the chair. if that-